We would like to welcome you to our session that discusses resources around STEM and career exploration that are actually free to Tennessee districts. One resource, Learning Blade, has been free and accessible for several years now. And the second resource, Tennessee CAPS, the Career Awareness Preparation System, has been going into its second year of availability to Tennessee districts. And I am very pleased that I've got a good friend from Rutherford Chamber of Commerce, Beth Duffield, joining me to do this presentation for you. And we're going to try to make this PowerPoint walkthrough a lively adventure. So Beth, you want to just say hi?
Hello, welcome.
I really wish COVID has put an emotional professional strain on me because I'm very much a people connectivity relational person, and I convene people for a living. And so you can imagine COVID is worn on me. So I'm glad that we're starting to transition into in-person convenings again, but unfortunately that we're having to record this one. I would love to have that interaction, but we're going to pretend we're interacting to the best of our ability. So we're going to talk about the first resource, Learning Blade, that is designed as a tool and resource for fifth through ninth grade to introduce them to STEM careers. And it's really cool the way they do this. It's different than any other STEM resource I've seen, in that students work through missions that are related to societal issues that are actually going on right now. So it engages them and interests them. And I'm going to give you some examples and show you what that looks like. And then I'll talk about the Tennessee CAPS program that is designed for K through 12 career exploration. And I'll go ahead and give you a little teaser on it. A couple of things I love about it. One, it's got lessons that are downloadable and based on Tennessee academic standards. And two, the careers that are explored are Tennessee companies, so that students can not just learn about a particular job or career path, but they're actually learning about career paths that a lot of times are in their community, definitely within their economic region, and of course the whole state of Tennessee. So excited to share these resources, especially for our Tennessee folks, because they're free to districts across the state. Beth, I'm going to
So,
turn it over to you.
yes, so I think one of the things we look at the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce in our work with both our industry partners and our students is the need to get students aware of careers in STEM as early as possible. So, our strategy here really focuses on career exposure in elementary grades, career exploration in middle school, and then career experience through CTE programs and work-based learning in high school. And so, one of our challenges with that is just helping students understand what STEM is, and how that connects to their community and why it's important. There's just a lack of awareness of science, technology, engineering, and math, and how those play out into future careers. We know that 94% of middle school students are making career related decisions somewhere between sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And so the more we can do by using resources like Learning Blade and Tennessee CAPS with our students, the better they're able to start to make decisions that will positively impact their future.
Yeah, and I think that statistic is pretty crazy. 94% of middle schoolers um, starting to make those decisions, because I've been an elementary principal, high school principal, and a executive principal over a feeder pattern. I know that back in the day, we didn't start talking about careers with students like their junior year, sometimes spring of their junior
Right.
year, like, what do you want to do? And okay, we'll try to find a post-secondary fit for you. And I'm so glad that's starting to back up much earlier, and because I think it not only exposes students to careers they might be interested in, but it closes some doors that they might think that career paths they might think they want to pursue. And if they make that decision their junior, senior year, and they go into post-secondary and find out, man, this just wasn't for me, they wasted a lot of time and
Right.
money. I know myself, I changed majors like 3 or 4 times. And so I'm glad we're starting to back this up.
And to play off what Jared was saying in terms of helping students make better choices about careers earlier and exposing them to STEM careers, that is also important from our workforce standpoint. So the sooner we can get students completing early post-secondary and high school and post-secondary certificates or degrees, and the faster we can get them into the workforce, the faster we can fill some of these huge gaps that our current STEM employers are experiencing. So demand for STEM and computer science workers just continues to grow. We know that STEM jobs pay more at all levels, particularly in that middle skill area. And a middle skill job is one that requires more than a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year degree. And our TCATs and our community colleges in Tennessee do a great job of providing those pathways for students to earn those certificates and fill those great STEM related middle skill jobs. So we just really need to help students understand what those opportunities are. The other thing that STEM does really works well for our women, minorities, and underrepresented folks. There are lots of opportunities for those categories in the STEM career fields. And so, again, exposing students earlier through tools like CAPS and Learning Blade will only help to get those populations engaged in those careers much earlier.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned about middle skills because I'm literally convening a group of industry leaders in Knoxville in a couple of days to talk about this huge gap in their workforce pipeline that they just can't find those middle skilled workers with credentials they could get in high school and go into a
Right.
living wage career the day after they graduate. And so I'm glad that both these resources really promote a philosophy that I try to when I do workforce development and working with school districts is in elementary grades, it's really about awareness, just letting them know what careers are out there and kind of pique their interest. Then middle school, it's more about exploration and really, again, not so much finding stuff you're interested in, but closing doors so you can refine where your interest lies. And then in high school, it's about attainment. Like, how can we start them on a pathway to a credential or even get a credential before they graduate?
And before you leave that slide, Jared, I would just want to mention the other stat there on 23% of students who are prepared for STEM but not interested. We work with an aptitude inventory in Rutherford County that helps identify a students' aptitudes, and we find that that is absolutely the case. We have students that have the aptitude for these careers, but they've not been exposed to them, so there's no interest. So we've got to increase exposure so we increase interest and then marry that with those aptitudes.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. And Learning Blade definitely, I mean, that's its whole reason for existence is to pique that interest. And so it's really tailored to the interest of the students. It can be these missions are competency based as they work through them by themselves. And so a teacher can let them choose a mission they're interested in and work through that material self-paced way versus forcing a student to say you've got to do this mission or you've got to study this particular STEM field. It really gives them opportunity to explore where their interests lie. And there's a lot of information on this slide that I'm not going to read it to you. I know our audience is capable of doing that, but I want to pull out a couple of things from it. Um, the thing about Learning Blade is that if you got a internet access, you can work on this anywhere. Now, I'll talk to you about later on in the presentation, students that might not have access and have a connectivity issue, how Learning Blade is bridging that gap right now. But as long as there's internet access, students can work through this content. And, the thing you talked about marrying that interest with their skill set. I have a personal story about my son who's going to he's a junior this year. And when I was doing some work in Chattanooga and I came across Learning Blade for the first time and the Thinking Media team, and they gave me free access so I could explore it. So I always use my kids as guinea pigs, and so put my son on there to work one of the missions. So he went through the 3D printing module, and he just got so interested in that, and he begged. He's like, if I can earn some money, you help me out get a 3D printer. And next thing I know, he's printing stuff he's selling, and he's starting this little business, got an online business. And the next thing I know, he's going to the credit union getting a loan for a laser engraver. And fast forward 2 or 3 years, he's got a business with uh, almost 40 customers. And
Wow.
yeah, and it interests him, this manufacturing and industrial engineering and fab lab type stuff. And so now he's on the engineering path. He's already decided what school he's going to go to after he graduates next year. And it literally was catalyzed by him doing the Learning Blade. He had never mentioned engineering before, never mentioned the fab lab stuff. And so now my whole work basement used to be mine, that I had, all my tools and my workbench, all my saws and all this kind of stuff. He has taken that over, and he's got 3D printers and that big laser engraver. So I've got
That's great.
personal stories of how this can catalyze a student's interest and put them on a path. So here's the 12 missions that students can look at and work through. And you see there's just a plethora of different STEM career paths that they could work through. And again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but I mean, it's really cool how they got that first one, dolphin rescue, help rescue, rehabilitate injured dolphin. And I've worked through this one myself, and you actually help build a functional tail for the dolphin. And there's a lot of hands-on activities every single lesson in these missions, and you'll see the different kind of clusters in a minute that are embedded in these missions and the skills that students learn. But there's a ton of hands-on activities, so it's really taking what they're learning as they work through the content, and then they have to actually apply it in a hands-on way. And then there's an assessment through each of the modules, that so that it's competency based, and they work through, and it's not just just clicking through the content and saying, oh, okay, I'm done. There's those assessments push the students to make sure that they've actually mastered that content. I mean, again, I think there's some really cool stuff here. um, and and the flu outbreak is definitely one that is applicable.
Timely for sure.
Yeah, coming off our pandemic, or still at the tail end of our pandemic. um, each mission, here's some of the components that are embedded in every mission. You got the interactive lessons. There's over 400 lessons, and they're all tied to the academic standards that the majority of states use. And so and they can it's really designed so that it doesn't have to be a classroom teacher that's using this. I mean, it could be a computer teacher, it could be guidance counselor, anyone. It's really a prepackaged deal. And students, as they work through all these different lessons, they're still getting those core academic standards as if they were in a classroom working on English, math, science, social studies. Those academic standards are embedded in here. You got design thinking, is really pushing students to think and problem solve. Again, just like the dolphin example, you're helping design a new tail for the dolphin. It's got videos where students can click on and see what a career in that field actually looks like. Someone in with a real life person that's doing applying these skills in their job. You've got move my box here so you can see coding activities, which is huge right now with a lot of companies. Everywhere you literally, and even again with the pandemic, working from home, there's so many jobs students could access. The challenge project, so you can really push the students to do hands-on activities that push their thinking in that particular lesson. The 3D printing that I mentioned earlier, really, that to me catalyzes a lot of interest for students. And there's parent facets to the Learning Blade activities. And then the paper craft figures where you really, students are doing origami type hands-on things that relate to the careers and technologies. Let's see. You can see the clusters here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just that the depth that students go through, it's not just 2 or 3 lessons in a mission. I mean, you can see that there are, you know, around 10 different modules that they're working through. That, and so there's depth to every single one of these missions, and they really are getting just immersed in that career path. And you look at these outlines, all the different things that they pull into that relates to those careers. So it really immerses that student in that particular career path, so they can see that they either like it, or again, as my perspective, they can figure out they don't like it. I just think it's great, the depth in these modules or these missions. And then students can pick their own, as I said before, or a teacher can assign specific modules. So let's say a science teacher in 5th through 9th grade, you're covering a particular topic, they can assign a mission so that it relates to what's going on in the classroom, and have them work through that either individually, or they could work through it maybe as a group. And here's what the dashboard looks like for the students. So you can see, again, as I said, self-paced and it's competency-based. You look at the status right here. I started to point with my finger, and I don't think that wouldn't work in this setting, but you can see my pointer. You can see that it's either in progress, completed, or they did not master that particular skill and they have to go back and work on that, or they haven't started something. So it's really easy for the student to see where they are, and for the teacher to keep track of how they're doing. And you look at the different ways that careers are introduced to the students. So beyond just the lessons they're having to do and the assignment type things, that the other activities that are embedded here, and the different ways that they come at these different career paths, is just unbelievable. I mean, you got the 3D printing, like I said, and actually having to calibrate certain systems. So it's pushing students in a dozen different directions. Design thinking is a big part of it. It's trying to get them to get outside of just the memorize something and then regurgitate an answer, read something, regurgitate an answer. It's really forcing them to get background research on what they're studying. They've got problem statements that they've got to work through. And I mean, it's, again, there's that standards alignment, and then there's a rubric for every lesson that a teacher can use to score the students and how they did in that particular lesson. We talked about they include projects. I mean, you can see here's an example of some of the hands-on activities. Every lesson includes a writing prompt, then you got a presentation prompt, and then some kind of manipulatives using just common materials that are in the classroom. So there's not a big expense to have to go out and buy lab equipment or something like that. Actually, the 3D printer is probably the most expensive things, and Learning Blade has some resources to help schools and classrooms get those 3D printers so that students can use them. So it's so interactive, every lesson. And here's some examples of the 3D printing that they might do and how they can apply it.
Jared, if I could just step in there for a minute, and talking
Sure.
with a lot of teachers, we used to do a STEM camp for teachers at the end of the school year. And one of the things, there's a misnomer that you need a lot of supplies and it's going to cost a lot of money to do STEM activities in your classroom. And I think Learning Blade really speaks to the fact that it's not going to cost a lot of money. Some of our schools actually have students recycle from their house and bring those items in to the classroom to use for activities just like this.
Yeah, yeah. Again, that's another thing I love about it is that anyone can really do these without a heavy lift in the classroom. It's pretty much prepackaged, and you can use any kind of materials that are common in your classroom. Uh, it, Coding is a huge thing right now, and there are offline lessons and online lessons that students can do and go do some specific things with code.org, which is the leader in the country in helping students code and getting people certified for coding. Um, and I just want you to see the uh, the magnitude of just in the state of Tennessee, and Learning Blades in multiple states around the country. But in Tennessee alone, in the past few years, there's been over 1 million STEM lessons completed by students, which to me is incredible. And over 200,000 hours of STEM instruction have been given to Tennessee students. Now, this is just Tennessee statistics. It's not all the other states that Learning Blade is in. And the statistics at the bottom, to me, are pretty telling about when surveyed across the nation. You've got almost 60% of students are more likely to be interested in STEM careers, 140% more likely to respond that they know what STEM people do, STEM workers do. Where before, if you ask a student that hasn't gone through a resource like this, what's a STEM job, they might say something related to flowers. And then 70% are more likely to talk about science with others. So it really catalyzes something in students in that arena. And Beth, I know you work a lot to try to establish these career pathways early on in school and connect to industry folks and the post-secondary folks. So when you see statistics like this, what's that? What's your reaction?
Well, it makes our employers really happy because so we coordinate or organize industry-led councils for 5 high-demand areas, all STEM related: construction, healthcare, IT, manufacturing, and supply chain management. And our employers want to know how they can get involved or how they can help or what resources are out there to help kids become more interested in their career fields. So resources like Learning Blade and TN Caps are exactly what our employers are interested in and are excited about.
Yeah, great. So this, let me get back on here. This is my attempt to liven up the PowerPoint recorded presentation. I told Beth before we started recording, so I actually Googled STEM jokes, and this was about the best I could come up with. So this is like the intermission joke right before we go on to tea and cap, so that we can wake everybody up maybe a little bit with a chuckle from my attempt at STEM humor.
I think it's good. I thought it was funny.
So one of the issues with a resource like Learning Blade or CAPS or any of these online resources that have become so important to students since the pandemic, the past years, it's almost exactly a year that everything shut down, students were learning from home, and then we had, depending on the school district, either completely virtual or a hybrid model where students were having to work at home. And I work a lot in rural communities in my job, and even in my home community, which is very rural in Turtletown, Tennessee, students were having to go to hotspot areas to do work, and there's a rural post office a few miles down the road from my home, and it was crazy to see cars there at 8 o'clock at night in the parking lot of that post office just so they could get internet access for their kids. You got kids in the back seat trying to do, literacy lessons. I mean, it's crazy. We can't expect kids to do stuff like that. So the lack of connectivity has been a major issue this past year, and it's one the Tennessee Chamber in particular we have we have really pushed and advocated for more resources to connect students and families. So Learning Blade has tried to address that and help that during the pandemic. And they came up with the backpack, Learning Blade backpack, which is an app that enables students who don't have uh, connectivity at home to still work on the missions. And then when they come either back to school, if they're in a hybrid model, or if they connect to a hotspot area, it uploads all their information and enables them to continue to work on these missions at home if they don't have connectivity. And that teachers have just been in awe, really, of the ability to have this resource when, you know, you know this, Beth, when the pandemic first started and caught everybody by surprise,
Right.
really, educators, they, we didn't have a bunch of online resources other than, some kind of superficial things. And so the ability to have something like Learning Blade that students could still work on at home, with connectivity or without, was huge. And so teachers were really appreciative of that new resource from Learning Blade.
Well, and I think it speaks a lot to Learning Blade that they went ahead and provided this resource. I know I spent most of the month of March and April just researching all kinds of resources available to teachers and parents, and communicating with both groups about resources just like this.
Yeah. So it's awesome. That's great. So we've talked about this. We've beaten this to death pretty much. Beth, you want to talk about just some of the jobs that are out there in the climate right now, in the environment right now?
Well, I will speak from personal experience as of yesterday. So we held our first ever almost post-pandemic job fair outside at TCAT in Smyrna. We had 65 employers participate. And one of the reasons we wanted to hold it at TCAT, well, one, we needed a parking lot that was big enough to support that many employers. Didn't know that you could tailgate for a job fair, but we figured out how to do it. And but we wanted to have folks get exposed to our Tennessee College of Applied Technology and the resources that are available there from an education standpoint. And I won't know until we actually do surveys of both participants, job seekers, and employers later this week. But my guess, just from anecdotal conversations, probably 95% of the folks that were there in either capacity, we also had some volunteers, had never been on any TCAT campus, really didn't know what they were. And I think that's just so important when we're talking about STEM careers. And we talked earlier about those middle skill jobs. That's what a Tennessee College of Applied Technology can help students complete a certificate there and get one of the over 1,400 jobs that were available at our job fair yesterday. So this is incredibly timely. And I think we're seeing exciting in Tennessee that the economy is rebounding. I know our unemployment rate here in Rutherford County is almost back to where it was pre-pandemic, which is right at about 4%, which is if
Wow.
anybody wants a job, they can have a job.
Yeah.
So we just need to get not only adults, but students connected to employers. And one of the things we are working very hard on is helping students, high school students, get career connections, so work-based learning opportunities in the field they're interested in or considering pursuing as a career before they graduate high school.
Yeah.
And again, these resources are ways to start that process to get them there.
Yeah. And I actually had a conversation, and here's just some more statistics if people want to look at this while I'm talking about another anecdotal example. I mentioned earlier that I will be in Knoxville in a couple of days to meet with some industry leaders. And to your point about starting earlier with high school students and work-based learning, an employer called me, said, Jared, I'm not able to attend the meeting, but if you can figure out the magic behind getting these high school students aware that we're out there, and here's the minimal skills and certifications you got to have to come to work for us, said I can hire 20 people tomorrow. He said and they are certification jobs, but they're minimum certifications that
Right.
you get in high school. And he said, I go to high schools and I talk about our company. They don't even know our companies exist, and we've been here over 40 years. He said, I don't know how to make connections. And so what we're getting ready to talk about is a perfect example of this. Is Tennessee CAPS was specifically designed by Thinking Media in partnership with the Tennessee Chamber to expose K through 12 students to local jobs, regional jobs, and other jobs all across Tennessee. So they're specific to Tennessee and their local communities, and just for awareness for that exact example of the that industry leader that called me today. And so when we first started this a little over a year ago, we we launched right before the
Yeah.
pandemic, and we launched in 6 pilot districts. Rutherford County was one of the 6th, and Beth did such a great job of helping pull in the 3 key components whenever we launch in a CAPS community. Is we really start with that, the local chamber, and bring them in as a partner, and show them how this can be a great tool for their members and another benefit to their members, because it's free to any uh, to anyone in Tennessee, whether it's school district or parents, which I'll talk about the pandemic resources in a little bit. But we meet with that local chamber, get them on board, and then they engage their membership. And then we talk to the school district, and we say, okay, we've got industry leaders on board with this. We can provide you with these free lesson plans that are prepackaged for teachers that are going to be aligned to your businesses in your community. And so that your students can explore these career opportunities. So Beth, you want to talk about a little bit your experience when we first said, hey, we got this opportunity. Do you want to be a part of it?
Right. Well, Rutherford County Schools has been a great partner of the chambers for the last 8 years on projects just like this. So when Jared reached out and asked us if we would be a pilot community, I said yes. I think that this would fit right in with their vision of providing opportunities for students. And so the school district actually identified feeder patterns, so elementary, middle, and high school, and a contact within each of those schools to help create that continuum or pathway opportunity with our students. And we also connected that with those industry councils that I mentioned. And it was really interesting. It was timely that our construction council had been having conversations about how do we help teachers, help students at all of those grade levels really understand what careers in construction look like. And in most parts of Tennessee, there's a lot of construction going on, and there's a great demand for all levels of construction workers, from our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, so HVAC, electricity, plumbing, both in residential and commercial. There are design engineers that are needed, so it spans the gamut. And our partner at Middle Tennessee State University, Dr. Heather Brown, who runs the concrete and construction management program. So she's been in education for a long time. She said, maybe I could sit down and actually develop some lesson plans tied to state standards that we could provide to teachers and pilot this. And about that very same time, Jared contacted me about the Tennessee CAPS program. And I went back to our construction council and said, whoa, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. They've already got this system that's being developed. We just need employers to sign up for it and list the types of jobs that they're hiring for. And the Learning Blade folks will do all that work for us. So Jared, I'll let you tell them a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, divine intervention.
It was
in
definitely
workforce development. So the whole point of CAPS, as I've said before, is to connect students to career pathways that are local, regional, and statewide. So it's Tennessee specific companies and so that students were really trying to create pathways so they don't have to leave their community for a job. They can find a living wage career within commuting distance. And one of the things that teachers complain about, when you try to do career exploration, is like, I don't have time for this. I've got
Right.
tested curriculum I've got to do. And so they're apprehensive to try to introduce a new platform within online platform to use with students because they got so much to do already. So great thing about CAPS is already pre-packaged lessons. All you have to do is download them. It's got all the activities spelled out. It's got um, for middle school to high school, they can work through them themselves, self-paced. You got to help some of the elementary students, but I'll go back to that continuum. I talk about these lessons are designed for elementary students, just awareness of the companies. In Rutherford County, if a elementary student's on the bus and driving by a Nissan plant every day, and they're like, what they do there? Well, they hear maybe they build cars, but they don't know that there's also, 10 other career paths within Nissan besides just building cars that they might find interest in. So it's already prepackaged. And I will tell you, elementary guidance counselors love CAPS because there is not very many resources for elementary guidance counselors to talk about career paths. And if there are, they're very generic. Whereas again, CAPS, I will emphasize over and over, these are based on local career paths so that there's really a connection there for students. And also, the Tennessee academic standards are embedded in all these lessons. So when you look at a lesson, it's going to have the career name description. It's going to be self-paced, except for the elementary lessons that need a little bit more help. There's always some kind of hands-on creative problem solving activity, and it's going to be connected to that career. And uh, that academic standards alignment is also appealing to teachers that teach core content that's tested at the end of the year, because they don't feel like they're taking away from that this complements what they're doing in their classroom. There's the 6 pilot districts. And one of the things that Thinking Media did when the pandemic hit, we mentioned the backpack app they worked on so students could work from home, but they also made a parent-friendly access on the website so that parents could download lessons and work with their students if they're having to help. I had my homeschool going on when they were out all those months, and even during the hybrid time, I was looking for resources, and I used the CAPS stuff to work with my kids because I had 4 that were just all behind me and during Zooms working at a table. And so you can see there was almost 46,000 student impressions just in those 6 pilot districts and that's during the pandemic. So, because we launched, I guess in February, maybe, Beth, of 20. And so we only really had a month in
Right.
the schools when everything shut down. So that shows you the value that teachers that are facilitating virtual learning and parents found in this resource. So each lesson plan is tailored to that grade level and in that local region of the state. We come in, as I said before, and recruit the businesses. If you're an industry person right now that's looking to help your talent pathways, this is real easy to go on the CAPS website, and I'll show you where the survey button is. CAPS site's so easy to use. I was told one time by a buddy of mine, Joe T. Wood, he said, if teachers can't get there in 3 clicks, they're not going to use it. And so you literally can get to the information in 3 clicks on this website. And it's less than that for businesses. Go to the survey, and it's really just a profile of your company and the career paths that are in there. It takes about 10 minutes or less to fill out, and then uh, Learning Blade can align that within that sector that they might already have some lesson plans for, or make a customized lesson plan if it's a new career that's not already embedded in there in the lessons. And so the students connect with those local careers. This says we got 120 companies. We've really surpassed that. I can't remember. I think it's about 180 now or more across the state. So that number is a little low for what we've got. The customization is done by grade band. You can search if you're a teacher, you can search by grade band, you can search by industry, you can search by local business, or you can search by those top 16 career clusters in the state, or you can search by economic region. So you can create those lessons that are aligned to those careers in your region of the state. I'm going to walk you through the website a little bit and show you this. I love the website because it's just clean and easy to use. This is the homepage at tncaps.org, or you can go tn-caps.com. We've got all those domains, and so got our bases covered. And you just click on whether you're a school, a business, or you're a chamber of commerce, and once you click if you're an educator, it'll take you to this page, and you just select your school district. You select the grade level you want to pull lessons from. You select your school, and then you just hit the get started button, and it will give you lessons to choose from. And here's an example on health science of a lesson, and as you can see, it's got the learning objective. I almost pointed again, Beth, to the screen. But if you look at my pointer on the screen, you can see they've got the learning objectives. You'll also have the academic standards that are covered in that lesson on the sheets that you download that give the overview of that particular lesson. And there's also multimedia embedded in here so that you can pull up videos for the students, or if they are working online, you can put a link or something for them to look at the videos. And speaking of videos, something new we've started. I hadn't even told you this, Beth. I don't think that we are having folks that are in these career paths, let's say industrial maintenance, do a short video just with their phones and talk about what their day-to-day job looks like, and so that students can see real world in action folks doing these careers. And I'll be sending you something on that because
That's great.
it's real simple. They do record on their phone and just upload it to a link that the Thinking Media has developed. And so we'll start embedding those into these lessons. And so that's a new initiative that we're rolling out.
That's great.
And again, this is within that same lesson. You can see there's they actually are they have to do a pulse check and have to calculate these numbers, and so again, each lesson's interactive. And one of the things that we really encourage employers when they're filling out their survey, there's different engagement activities they can do. Now, I know with the pandemic that made it more challenging because either schools shut down or visitors couldn't come in, or that's probably the first career fair you've had in however long, I'm assuming, or
Last one was in July or August of 2019. So yes.
Yeah, so
3 years.
so it's these engagement activities have been challenging, but as we're starting to open up again, we really encourage employers to select some of these activities that they're willing to do, because before the pandemic, some of the companies reached out about they were uncertain about going to elementary schools because they're used to going in high schools and giving a talk or showing up for job fairs, sometimes middle school. They didn't know what to do with kindergartners. And one company in particular that makes tape measures is one of the things they do. They brought some for the first graders, and it was hilarious to see them in there, and they had a great time explaining, like, here's the product we make. You might see this in your garage, your dad's garage, and things like that. And so they loved it after that. So we encourage companies to not just say, here's a profile of what we do, but to really reach out, go into the schools, or do those videos. I mean, that's an easy lift to, spend 2 minutes or a few minutes talking about what you do and showing students what the job looks like. And here, the thinking media practice is what they preach. They went into schools and talked about uh, computer engineering and things like that, computer science. And I was there, and I got to tweet out a bunch of stuff, and we had a great time with those elementary students. So the benefits of Tennessee CAPS is that um, it doesn't have to be used just in the classroom. I mean, anyone in the building, whether it's a teacher's aide, computer teacher, or in after school programs, we've got uh, partnerships with some nonprofits across the state that sponsor after school programs that love Tennessee CAPS because they're the workers in those programs. It's just prepackaged for them, and so that's just the value add in that everything is already done for. And there's an assessment with every lesson and a rubric that the whoever's overseeing the lesson can use. So everything is done for them. You just it's a one-stop shop. And so businesses love it because it's the awareness that, just like that employer that called me and says, they don't even know, we've been here over 40 years, and I go into schools and they don't know we exist. So they love that they're getting exposure into the schools. Obviously, it's a benefit for the students, and then for the teachers, just how easy it is to use, and the fact that I'm going to add here that it aligns to those state standards in Tennessee, so it's complementing what they're doing already. Beth, you got anything you want to add?
No, I'll just emphasize the value to the businesses from a branding standpoint. Jared, you were mentioning that no one knows who that company is. We have the same issue. We've got the big companies like Nissan and Bridgestone, but we also, for those two big companies, we probably have 40 to 50 suppliers that all support those with brand names that no one's heard of before.
Yeah.
So, but with great employment and career path opportunities. So this is a great way for them to get their name out there, their logo, so that not only students, but also parents, if they're engaging with their students in these activities, get those opportunities as well. So it kind of becomes a two-gen approach to filling some of our jobs and our workforce development opportunities, in that it really helps expose those companies to a greater audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, again, just the overview that Learning Blade is designed for 5th through 9th grade. Now, I will tell you, a lot of high school teachers, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, use Learning Blade too, maybe as a supplemental resource. And if you want to learn any more about Learning Blade or CAPS, again, these are free resources within the state of Tennessee. Here's the contact information, and man, just take advantage of these. It's so great. And I'll say that I'll give credit to Governor Lee. He is, the past 2 years, funded Learning Blade and CAPS because of his belief in career exploration for students and these STEM jobs that are out here. So he's give him credit for supporting both these resources for Tennessee districts. And so on behalf of Beth, thank you for joining us as we walk through a recorded PowerPoint. This is my first foray into that. I really wish I could just, like, people were behind my laptop that I could interact with, especially afterwards. I guess I can hand out my cards to my kids or something, because I'm used to handing out my cards. So
it's the networking that's been so hard on us people.
Yes. Thank you, Beth, for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to join me in this presentation. And hopefully you'll learn more about it and take advantage of it.